Okay. Hi, everyone. It's Friday, July 29th, 2016 at 1 o'clock Eastern Time, and this is Higher Ed Special Edition. I'm your host, Erin Sapinka, and on today's live broadcast, we're talking about implementing a faculty content strategy. We've proved faculty content deserves a strategy beyond a basic directory. Faculty content makes way for rich storytelling, media mentions, and deeper engagements with prospective students, alumni, and donors. For this Higher Ed Special Edition, we'll talk about the steps you can take to implement faculty content on your website and connect your efforts to your institution's strategic plan, driving media coverage, alumni engagement, and student recruitment. But before we dive in, a quick word about our sponsors. Higher Ed Special Edition is part of the Higher Ed Live Network, offering viewers direct access to the best and brightest minds in education. Live broadcasts allow viewers to share knowledge and participate in discussions around the most important issues in the industry. Today's live viewing experience is powered by Maestro, the premier marketing tech platform for broadcasters. All episodes of Higher Ed Special Edition are free and accessible in the video archives at higheredlive.com and in podcast form on iTunes. Today's episode is made possible by Expert File. Higher Ed Live is produced by M. Stoner, a marketing and communications firm that works with education institutions on branding, strategy, web design, and more. M. Stoner is offering a two-part webinar series on Google Analytics and Tag Manager in August. Higher Ed pros often have Google Analytics in their toolbox, but determining digital success takes more than just counting clicks and page views. It's a challenge to identify meaningful metrics and have the right configuration in place to make use of them to achieve your goals. Registration is $2.99, and we're tweeting out a link shortly where you can learn more and register. Now I can intro our guests. Today I'm joined by J. Michael Moore of Emory University's Goizueta Business School. His career has spanned the worlds of sports journalism, public relations, digital communications, publishing, social media, user experience, and content strategy. At Emory, he manages emorybusiness.com, social media strategy, media relations, and some corporate communications from the school's dean. Thanks for joining me today, J. Mike.
Oh, thank you for having me. Good to be here.
Before we dive into my questions, I just wanted to remind those of you viewing at home, please don't hesitate to ask questions using the hashtag HigherEdLive. I'll do my best to answer the questions as they come in. So J. Mike, you have had a unique professional journey. We were talking a little bit before we got on the air, but I want to know a little bit more about your experience and your position at Goizueta. I just did a quick, brief intro. I wanted to give you the opportunity to explain where you've been and where you've come from.
Sure, it's a long and sordid tale, I guess you could say. I primarily consider myself a storyteller, and that comes from my journalism background and a very early class in basic reporting, where the professor just hammered that into our heads and said, "You, above all, you tell stories. You tell stories. You tell stories." And that really hit with me. And the stories I wanted to tell were sports stories. I said I want to be a sports journalist and been wanting to do that since I was probably 12 years old, and was lucky enough to leave school and work in the NFL for 7 seasons. Worked for a few different teams and wrote for the website, managed team publications, etc. Did social media. Basically as an in-house beat reporter. It was the best way to describe it. And from there, I knew I wanted to stay in digital. I knew I wanted to stay in communications. Wanted a different type of lifestyle, kind of get out of the sports frame of reference, and ended up at Emory University at Goizueta, and was there for 2 years doing much of what I do now, and then got a chance to go work in user experience. And that was something I never thought I would do. But I moved to Silicon Valley and worked for a software development team at Samsung, and worked on application development for TVs and phones, and doing content, basically voice of the product and content things there. And as luck would have it, I ended up coming back to Atlanta with my family, and ended right back up at Goizueta. Total serendipitous situation. I've known my boss for a long time. She's a great person. Angela Bostic is our chief marketing officer, and is a thought leader in her own right, and encourage you to find and follow her if you're at all interested. And here I am, just working to expand our reach, our stories as a business school, and use all the different channels we can to do it.
I'm I love where you've been all over the communications spectrum, from just actual content creation to figuring out how users are engaging with the content and the different
Mhm.
things that we're putting in front of them. You really do have the full experience of that, and it's just an incredible, journey, I guess, to hear.
Yeah, it's not. That's nice to hear. Thank you. I think the downside to that, I always joke, is, writers write, and I don't really have as much time to write as I used
Mm,
to, and that's sometimes a little bit bittersweet. So
yes.
I do try to get my byline on emerybusiness.com every now and then, and um, try to do what every journalist says they want to do. And one day it's like, I want to write a book, so try to dive into that a little, and then you realize very quickly that life is better than fiction, and it's very hard for someone with a sort of a news brain to come up with stories, because that's like the cardinal sin, right? Like, I can't make up the news, so it kind of is difficult. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun. It's been a growing experience, and I think that the thing I love about it is I've been able to kind of latch on to this wave of technology and the changes in the way people communicate, and figure out how to remain relevant, and our messaging to remain relevant, et cetera. So, I mean, give it a double cover years, I'm probably going to have to start telling stories completely in emoji, and that we'll get there somehow. I'll figure it out.
I already try and send some text in just emojis, and hope that someone can interpret it. I like to see if I'm up to the challenge of getting across what I was trying to say in just the pictures. Doesn't
Yeah.
always work, but I try.
Hmm.
So we've talked about the need for faculty content strategy in previous episodes, and I think it's a conversation that really is starting to move past the directory and the just pitching media or pitching faculty to media as experts. With all of the competing needs in higher ed, competing needs higher ed professionals are facing, why and how did you decide to really focus on a faculty content strategy? I mean, you seem to be pulled in a lot of directions. What stood out as this needs to be something we're focusing on?
Yeah, and that's a great question, and something that I think will always be a moving target, especially in higher ed and especially in business schools. Um, I like to think of business schools as sort of the front line of a lot of these higher education changes. We are very much affected in trying to figure out what do we do with online education, because people want to get business acumen. They want to come back and either get skills or certifications or maybe even degrees on how to do business analytics better or how to do leadership better. Those are the direct applicable things that people are coming after, and the top 25 schools like us, we're not immune to that. So, we knew that we're never going to be able to really kind of lock it down and say, like, this is what we are about always from here and forever, in terms of what our content's going to be. But we decided that our fabric, our core as a school, is community and collaboration. And we said, let's build our strategy on that. We're a smaller school. We're one of the smallest in the top 25, especially for MBA programs. And because of that, we have a smaller faculty. We only have about 80 faculty members, and that includes adjuncts and non-research faculty. So, if I were going to be about faculty heft and research and how we kind of influence the business community, I need to be pretty pointed on what it is I wanted to do, because there's not going to be a lot of breadth in anything. We're gonna be thin. We're gonna be know a lot about anything, but not very deep in anything. So I needed to figure out how a way to make things deeper and concentrate on some things. So that's where we said, let's align with our school's strategic plan as best we can, and say, okay, what kind of faculty research do we have here? What kind of student influence do we have here? What kind of corporate influence do we have? And really take a more topical approach to how we present ourselves to the outside world, and not the shotgun approach of I've got all these faculty members and they cover everything from A to Z, and I'm going to pitch them directly to the media, because you hit some home runs that way, but that's really kind of all you're hitting, is you're waiting to hit home runs. And we needed more base hits, and try to move people around and do a little station to station action to try to score.
Yeah, and
see, the sports writer thing just comes out of me. I can't help it.
I was going to say, I played softball growing up, and the one thing, my mom was our bookkeeper, and she always said, yeah, big hits are awesome, but you need to have people on base for when those big hits happen, because otherwise it's one person scoring or it's one person getting a triple. It doesn't matter that much because there was no one to score.
Mm-hmm. Correct. and and the thing is too, it takes a lot of time and resources to do good faculty media relations and PR. I think that's a misnomer. Yeah, I think some people have, you take and you throw out a few experts and the media will come. Well, that's not the case anymore. The media is so fragmented, and they are so focused on so many different things. And if you don't get into the news cycle, you aren't necessarily getting picked up. So, that was another reason why I said we have to take a topical approach, and we have to be, topic expertise and find ways to drill deeper where we can, because I'm going to have to do more newsjacking. I'm going to have to jump in there and say, hey, reporter XYZ, you're covering ABC, and I've got a reporter who right now can talk about this. So that's where I've really tried to develop my resources, both contract resources and PR, and also my resources just in how I devote my own time. And also the tools I've used have even been designed for that: speed, consistency, and jump in, jump out, and try to get a hit whenever you can.
I'm really connecting with your aligning with Emory's strategic and topical frameworks, and I'm currently in a revisiting of that as well. Where at Dartmouth, where I'm at, where I'm looking at making sure that, because I'm the social media manager at one person shop, that what I'm doing is invested well. I'm not just kind of going all over the place trying to make a million things work. I'm really focusing on connecting what we're doing to the strategic framework that we have in place, so that I'm making an actual change, and I'm not just hoping that this will stick or this will make a difference. It's okay, I'm aligning myself and what we're doing with this overarching brand messaging. And so I'm wondering, can you talk a little bit how you mapped your strategy to the strategic plan? How did you get aligned with what they were doing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure. Part of it was we have a dean that really understands the value of communications and marketing and branding in reputation building. And, that is something that a lot of schools, even the well-established ones, are realizing that they have to monitor or build or, really not take for granted. Because, as the emergence of online comes into play, and there's a lot more things that takes, a student's consideration away, or takes away from just sort of that general brick and mortar type school. So everybody wants to make sure their reputation is top notch. And, so she understood the fact that, okay, we have to have a solid communication strategy. It also helped that we have a strategic plan that focuses on the intersections between business, practice, and education. So we are taking an approach as a school where we are saying, okay, what are the areas that we can have those wins? Where can we get the hits? Where can we get the, real impact for our stakeholders, for our alumni, for our students, for the community? Dean Erica James loves to say, and I can't agree with her more, that we should be in service to business. We should be in service to, the world. And I think that's something that every university can espouse to, is that, we should, make the world a better place. Well, how are we going to do that unless we're actually doing what the world needs? So we have areas of focus in the strategic plan, like analytics, like healthcare, Emory University, most people probably know us more for our healthcare and, fighting Ebola, over the past couple of years. So we've got this great hospital literally 100 yards from the business school. How are we lining up with that? Because, hey, guess what? Healthcare is the challenge of our generation. How are people going to pay for it? How is that going to work into the economy? So we have aspects of that. And then that becomes really easy at that point. Is like, okay, how do I align that to what can we talk about to the real world? So, out of, 10 topics, then it's just a matter of looking at the faculty spread that I have and say, okay, I have, some great faculty research in this area of decision making. Where does that align with the outside world? Whereas healthcare, it's more of, we have a lot invested in alumni. There's a lot of alumni who are in the space. We have a lot of practitioners who come in and speak in the space. So that might not be an area where I focus on media relations. That's an area where I focus more on some different types of content channels. So, what sort of roundtables can we host on healthcare? What sort of, other types of social media interaction and things like that to put us more as an expert in the space and not trying to go out and get media mentions out of. So that's sort of where we aligned it. And, I think that's something that I would encourage everyone to do, no matter what school that you are in, is that there's always going to be something that your school is known for, something that is either part of your community, part of your educational focus, et cetera. Try to align with those. Try to find those plugins and look for the, quick wins out of that.
First of all, I really love all of the sports references. I think it's just awesome, all of the different references in your explanation.
Hopefully that resonates with people. I mean, I know
Yes.
Not everybody's a sports fan, but we try.
No, I love it. And so can you talk a little bit about implementing that content strategy? I've heard that you took a really smart and interesting approach to it, and I'm wondering if you could just walk us through what you were thinking and how you ultimately implemented this strategy.
Mm-hmm. Well, first off, we got in on the ground floor. We were involved early and often with the strategic planning with the school. Not trying to influence it, because that's definitely something where faculty and pedagogy and curriculum and all of that have to really play. But just being there and hearing the conversations and knowing what was sort of rising to the top gave me a chance to sort of start identifying those different touch points, those different topics. And then from there, I think the important part in implementation is to look at all your content. It's very easy, especially folks like me who are from a straight ahead, write a story background, get your sources, inverted pyramid, they're done, to discount some other types of content. But when you're a small school, or even more importantly, when you are, lacking of resources, when you're a 1 or 2 person shop, it's important to take that step back and say, what is being said about us and where can we plug ourselves into the conversation? So social media is huge. We have followers who are talking about this. We have alumni that are in the space. We have our own faculty who are out there commenting on the space. We have events going on about these various topics. Our MBA students are machines. I mean, they host events on like every topic known to man and bring in great speakers. Well, we can't get to all those, but we can encourage hashtag usage, and we can get to them and say, can you make sure you tweet about this? And we can, curate that in ways to where we have packaged content that we can go out and move around the board, is what I like to say is, what can I put here? What can I put here? So that was the biggest part of the strategy, is sitting there, and you can look at my whiteboard in my office right now, and it lists out all these topics, and it says, okay, what content do I have in there? And let's step out of we need to write a story about everything and say, what other forms of communication are there? What are things that would make great videos? Well, let's go in there. What are some things that'll make great podcasts? let's go there. And it is, sacrificing amount for quality. I'm not going to take and go and push all of my different channels on one topic when a podcast with the faculty talking about this is going to be such a great way to present it. So a lot of it is mental, is just to try to get over that hump of saying, like, we need to just get everything we possibly can out there. It's finding the right channel for the topic, and then really focusing that extra time on distribution and saying, what hashtags can I drop in this to push it around to this audience? What email newsletters and things like that can I get it plugged into? Where does it need to go on our website? Where is the traffic going on the website to where I can get it in front of people, even internally? There was actually a process in this strategy of building out an internal newsletter and saying, okay, what are we going to put in the internal newsletter to try to build the conversation around this and get those brand points out to where the faculty and staff are talking about it, and talk about different types of strategy or different types of channels. Like, we actually do a print newsletter that gets passed around the building. And some people are probably going to think, it's 2016. Why are you doing that? And I would agree with you in some cases because it also gets emailed. But we've gotten such great response from that because it's different. You don't see that very often. And we don't print a lot because we don't want, to waste paper. Obviously, we're keen to that, but it does get passed around, and we have topics that we make sure are featured in the newsletter because we think that's the best way to raise the rhetoric around that topic.
I am a huge supporter of the kind of practice COPE, create once, publish everywhere. And it sounds like you're doing a ton of, rather than focusing on 27 pieces, you're really looking at those 5 or 6 solid pieces and breaking them down into, okay, this piece can go live here, this part of this can live here. And actually, I love packages. I really, in the journalism world, in the marketing world, packages just seem to be where we're headed with, okay, we're not just writing a word piece for this. We need to also accompany it with a video because video does better here. And this is where our audience for this is, and all of this other stuff that's coming together. And I just really love your approach to breaking it out and finding out that a print newsletter was getting your stuff in front of more people's eyes that could help you promote the piece, promote the topic. I think that we get so stuck sometimes in very specific, like, this is what we need to have for these pieces or these channels, and not looking actually, okay, well, how does it do here, or how does it best work? Maybe it's not even suited for a word piece. Maybe it's just a visual and story.
Yeah, and there's kind of and that's one thing I learned in working in user experience. And you think, well, what does user experience and design and all that have to do with writing? Well, it made writing and content production, I think it made me a more thoughtful producer of content and strategic placement of content by being in an industry and looking at things where the written word is not your primary focus. That's not what you want to do first. Meaningful design makes users' life easier. And in some cases, like, iconography is really hard, but look at your favorite app, your favorite apps that you have on your phone. There's not a word listed underneath of what that button does. It's an icon. And that the hamburger icon is a menu now. You don't need to say menu underneath. So it was sort of this kind of understanding that there is a need of the user. And it's funny, like my staff and people make fun of me now because I'll actually refer to everybody as users. And they're like, you mean readers, right? I'm like, well, yeah, but they're using our website. It's like they are experiencing our content, and that's not, something where they're just going to take and click through a page and read something. In some cases it is. And, we love those people because they increase our time on site, and we want to keep them. But, at the same time, there's certain things that are so much better than that, and such a more rich thing to the experience. And that's really what branding is experience. We want people to understand what experience they have when they come to Gosueta. They have to be able to see themselves inside of this. So that's the approach that we try to take, is that our users, our prospective students, their alumni, you have your list of type of people. What's the most meaningful to them, get in their shoes and really get beyond the style of journalism from, I'll just say back in the day, when it was we tell people the news.
Yeah.
There was a time and place for that, and honestly, we probably have swung too far to the other end of the spectrum now. But you have to give the user what the user needs, and lots of times perception is reality, and that's what the user wants. So you have to really strike that balance.
I think the word reader is just way too passive of a term to describe the people that we want to consume our information. We don't ideally want them to just sit there, read the news story, and move on. We want them to then do an action, maybe learn more about what we're talking about, connect with the faculty member, request more information. And so we're really not just delivering to readers, we are delivering to users. And I think if we lump them all into that readership or readers, you lose all of the nuances that make up a user. You don't have the prospective audience users. You kind of lose that when you just say, oh, the readers. And so I think referring to them as users really helps change that mindset to the content's not just us telling them something. We want them to do something after they read this piece or watch this video or see this image or whatever they may be looking at on our websites.
And I think that's where there's going to be this paradigm shift, and like people are starting to understand it, is that I remember being in the newsroom, and it was like, we loved the ad people because they sold ads, and that means we had a paper. And, but at the same time, it was just like, well, they're in advertising. And there was also really easy to kind of, thumb your nose at them a little bit, because sometimes they did too well. And you're like, we have to fill how many pages of content? But, marketing and communications, they were kind of opposed to each other, because communications was about telling the real story, where marketing is trying to make me buy something. But you're really starting to see these two come together. And I think the way we refer to it in our shop is we have paid and earned media. We don't have marketing and communications. We have earned media and paid media. And that's where they dance in the middle is really where the magic happens. And it's going to be different what I produce on the earned media side of the house, mostly because the way I measure it is going to be a lot different, because you can't necessarily track that one-to-one top of the funnel and then that person moves here to here. There are tools and there are ways you can implement, and we're trying to get those put together, but sometimes it that creates some minutia. But there's there's this interesting kind of connection that takes place between them, and I'm excited to be in that, and I hope that higher ed can continue to be a leader in that, because we have great stories to tell, but we also have great products to market. So they should work together, to try to influence each other.
Definitely. You mentioned tools really briefly in there, and then before you talked about a whiteboard, but there's a lot going on, and I can tell that you're always working on a ton of stuff. How are you staying organized? What tools are you using? What helped you get your content strategy and keep it up off the ground and moving?
Yeah. I think, let's see, am I screen sharing right now? Let me see here. So hopefully folks can see.
There's me again. Hello, me.
Oh, okay. But we should probably go here. So there's lots of different tools that I'm using, and one of them that I've used in my career in fits and starts, and I think I finally have found a really good use for it, is Trello. And this is where I kind of marry everything together in terms of the types of content we're doing and where it fits in the plan. So, I have, there's lots of cool tools out there that let you send content into Trello, email and other things, and basically any of those tools I have coming into an inbox where I can sort it. I have some stories that I'm editing. I have some stories that are actually behind, so you can see my face next to it, and I need to get to work on all these things. But the color codes, the labels inside of Trello allow me to basically see what the connection it is to our strategic plan. So this basically is where we marry the earned media and the social media together. We have topics that we like to work on and that we like to try to make sure that our stories stay within. But then we also have context. Whoops, wrong button. Also have context that pair more toward the marketing message, right? So, we always like to talk about being Atlanta, experiential learning, our function and industry knowledge, our network, our reputation. So these are the things that you see a lot of the times, like in your ads, right? It's like, the experiential learning difference or the power of Atlanta, lots of things like that, where these are your kind of core, like, okay, what are you writing about? Well, I'm writing about entrepreneurship, or I'm, doing some storytelling around entrepreneurship. So when these two can align with each other, that's the stuff that goes into sort of that sponsored media space, which is kind of what I call the social media boosting post and, paying for LinkedIn sponsored messaging and things like that. So that's the area where we make sure the two are held in check. And when we can't really get enough of these tags, we don't really cover it. We can't. Mm-hmm. It's kind of hard to show the value at that point.
I like the system of that color coordinating. That really, I'm a huge supporter of the strategy of saying no, which in my head is me being able to make a case as to why we're covering this. Why are we going to spend X amount of resources on it? What does it do? And if it doesn't meet a certain criteria that I've set up, it's not worth the time and effort necessarily. So I really like that use of the color coordination. We use it to organize what department, so news, social, digital. So that I kind of really like that color style.
Yeah. So the only downside is I think you have to pay for Trello Premium to get like more colors and different things like that. So that's for the next budget year. We'll try to make that ask. So before I get off content, this is sort of not a tool, but this is where everything goes. This is emerybusiness.com, which has become our hub for all of our different content that we are producing and curating. So there's a couple different, ways that you could organize this, that you find whatever's best for your community and your university. But this is, built off the idea of we need a news site, right? And I made sure we did this in WordPress because you need a dynamic site. You need something that can take in a lot of different content streams. You need something that's flexible. You need something that is cheap to develop on. WordPress being open source, it's like, hey, I can go, if I need a feature, I can probably find somebody to build it, or I could probably find a plugin that somebody's already made. So that's the reason why I'm choosing WordPress. And show just a couple of different content types and kind of how we built that in with strategy. One is where are the places that our faculty are, and it could be even content that we don't control. So some of the viewers may have heard of the Big Boulder Initiative. It's basically one of the leaders in what do you do with social data? What do you do with all this mountains of Twitter, data that you have on people, and how do you apply it to marketing, and et cetera. We have a faculty member, David Schwadell, who's a leader in this space, especially entertainment and how social lines up with advertising, and especially like streaming video advertising, et cetera. So we went out there because he's on the board of Big Boulder, and basically I did a Storify, just capturing all the tweets of the event. And this was something where, of course, we write about that David is there. That's the back of David's head. So there's that. Probably could have gotten a better picture of him. But in fact, he will ask me to get a better picture of him. And there's more to come here. I mean, we didn't just take and go out there and cover this event, but we actually did some other coverage that's in the works to show more how our faculty influence corporate. And this is something that obviously we could, throw into email blast or something about analytics for students who are interested in analytics to show that our faculty are plugged in with the business community. This is a story actually that I probably would have never produced if we didn't decide that we wanted to take some time to strategically think about entrepreneurship. Mm-hmm. Mike Dubin is an Emory alum. He's not a business school alum, but he is the founder of Dollar Shave Club, which, if you guys have not seen the Dollar Shave Club videos, please watch them. They're older now, but they're still just top-notch comedy.
They're great.
Yeah. So a couple weeks ago, Dollar Shave Club was bought for $1 billion. And it's like, I need to plug into this story, because it even though he was not an Emory alum, he has spoken at our business school, or not a business school alum, he's spoken at the business school. So I made sure that this was a story that we needed to get some application to. And it also gave us a chance to promote the next entrepreneurship summit that we're going to have at Emory. So instead of doing just a nice, boring press release talking about this, I was able to work it into an actual good piece of content. And I say good because not to be subjective, but good in the sense of it covers a lot of different types of, we've got video in a couple different places. We've got some photos. We've got link off to more information. And it puts our news in context. When Josh Luber, who is a business school alum, comes and speaks in the spring. Another really cool guy. Highly recommend you guys look into him too. Social enterprise is an area of focus. We have a center, social enterprise at Goseta, which we abbreviate SE at G. Has some cool things going on in terms of they have a specialty coffee index. And Aaron, you and I were talking about this off air. But their research, one stream of their research focuses on how do you get better return for the sort of entry-level things of industry. So they use coffee farmers for an example. You could use just about any sort of agricultural industry, but they also do micro entrepreneurs, et cetera, and try to figure out how do you get these folks to be more successful. So they have this index where they do the index price of specialty coffee. They call it the SCRPI, SCRPI, and they're working on ways to try to automate it better. So this is where I wanted to get into some of the tools we use, which is ExpertFile, which is one of the sponsors, I think, of today's show. And ExpertFile has been a great partner. I've really enjoyed working with them. On the surface, ExpertFile takes and organizes your experts. And it's a great way to build a media list, a great way to build a press room, if you will. Our press room is over here on emorybusiness.com, and our expert guide. These are all hosted on ExpertFile, and media can go search ExpertFile's database for comments, try to find people to comment for the news. But the thing that makes ExpertFile so powerful to me is its portability, and that's one reason I was attracted to it. And this is just this is just an embed. Peter Roberts is our head of social enterprise, and he's right here on this story, so people can get right to the source, and they can comment directly to him or request an interview with Peter. Here's another, decision-making is a focus. So we had a professor, Nikolai, here on the left on local business radio last week. Again, we try to grab content wherever we can and put it in here. So this is actually the Dana Barrett Show's channel. Make sure we embed that. And that's where dynamic websites come into play. Lots of web platforms, maybe even the ones that you've built your university website on, aren't going to be so flexible to just drop embed code in and roll with it. WordPress is. So that's why we focus on that. And then again, here's Nikolai down here. This photo was even chosen specifically. I didn't. I could have easily went without a photo, or I could have gone with the logo, or the logo of the radio station. But I thought that this photo was fantastic to show our relationship in the community. Dana Barrett's a great friend of our program. She does a lot of interviews, but it was also kind of like, how approachable our faculty are and how they are willing and eager to get out there and share their knowledge. And I had to get an NFL mention in here too. We do have a researcher who...
We lost you there for a second there, J. Mike.
Oh, do you have me now?
Your screen went black.
Do you see me now?
Let's see. No, we're still getting your profile picture. Hold on, we might come up in a sec. Maybe if you try and leave screen share and come back in. Oh, yay! Hello. Yes.
Okay, so let me try going back to screen share.
Yes, let's try that.
It's a little bit of a hiccup. Okay, how's this? We should be seeing a
yes.
Falcons rise up, but Patriots lead in new fan equity ranking?
Yep, that's where we're at.
Okay, great. So this is another example of getting the expert front and center using expert file and a way to immediately contact that expert, and also just a story that has a lot of bump to it. You can't really put anything out there about the NFL without people freaking out. Mike, unfortunately, Mike Lewis down here gets some fantastic mail from fans of teams down here at the bottom.
Oh man,
it's fantastic. And me, I just had fun with it because those of you who are familiar with the Falcons, I had a nice little pun here because Rise Up is their branding, their brand messaging. But so here you can see if I'm a member of the media or otherwise, I can go and directly see examples of Mike speaking, examples of Mike in the news, his areas of expertise. This is the expert file platform, and what I find so valuable because I can also take and talk. We talk about speed and sort of quick wins and hits. I can download the PDF version of this and email it to a member of the media. I can send them the link. I can also newsjack, and I'll quickly explain newsjacking to folks if they're not familiar. That's basically saying I have an expert that can speak on this topic, or I can tell you a different spin on this topic, and I'm going to insert myself into the conversation using Twitter or another form of media. So this actually is just a story that the story is down here. It's a story from the LA Times talking about Rio bracing for the Olympics and a little bit of an explanation of why Mike is a good source for this. And that's within the expert file platform as well. And we embed that in other areas for people to see. Wrong one. So this is our faculty research page. I make sure that I have these experts featured here as well. And then real quick, just curating our content. I use a tool called Tint, which some people may be familiar with. There's a lot of different ones out here, but this is a curation tool where I pull in everything based on our hashtags that we have asked people to use and we promote, as well as I can force content into here if I'd like. And this is just a great way to kind of bring everything together. And it's another way where I'll take and do specific coverage. So for events, this is great for events. This can go onto a screen inside of a room. This can, get sent to people's phones. You can even use a Chromecast stick and drop it on a screen in a room and direct broadcast to it. So, and then here's the Expert File Expert Center, which is incredibly powerful, especially the design lab that they have, which basically gives you all these different options to embed. So that's where Expert File really is a great, powerful tool, because I can move this content around in so many different places. Because part of this is realizing that our faculty themselves are content. That they have expertise, and they also have interesting stories, and they can be hubs to link to different types of content, whether it be their research papers or their media interviews, etc.
So what have been some of your early wins since you've been implementing Expert Files and this approach to your website?
Well, first of all, and I didn't pull up the slide, but we've seen an immediate bump in our media mentions from, probably along the range of, 30% or so over the past 6 months. And there's been a couple reasons for that were all built into the strategy. One is bringing in folks who can pitch and work well within certain topics. Mm-hmm. So one, we're writing about these topics more. We're producing more content about these topics, so we're more comfortable with them. So there's more to share with media and other folks to say we're experts in this area. But also brought in some PR resources who can help me target different industries and target different reporters. So that's one reason. Also is we're just producing more content. And, because when you don't have to spread yourself so thin and try to cover a lot of different things, and I shouldn't say we ignore everything else. Mm-hmm. We don't. This is just sort of like given the choice. This is the direction we go. This gives us a litmus test to try to really determine the value of what we're putting out there. Given that choice,
it's strategic.
It's strategic. So we're actually producing a lot more and, embracing the other pieces of content we have in the space, the social content, the alumni content, the other things that inside of that entire topic, that's given us more real estate, more inventory, so, the more you push that out there, the more visibility you get. So our page views are up on emorybusiness.com because of that. And, I would say probably the quickest win was the newsletter, was the internal newsletter, was the way to basically put out all this great stuff that people are doing and let our own staff become the advocates, and our own staff tell these stories. We looked at some numbers earlier this week about, how our staff engaged on LinkedIn. And there's some tools out there that, let you kind of leverage that to make sure LinkedIn, I'm associated with Gosweda Business School because I work there. Mm-hmm. I want to make sure I'm sharing the good Gosweda content to my network, and then they're going to share it with their network. I mean, it's, expand social media 101, right? It just grows. But our staff is extremely engaged on LinkedIn. And, for a small school, I mean, they are all over it and they're sharing stuff. So it's like, okay, well, what am I doing with this newsletter? They can't take and share the newsletter online, but there are links all in that newsletter. There are ways where they can go online and extend their story. All it is, they finally have something to share. And that, I think, has been probably the most surprising and quickest win I can think of, is that, we're empowering our stakeholders to tell our story.
I love that. That's incredible because, like you mentioned, it immediately expands your network, and they're getting in places and speaking with people that may not have otherwise interacted. And that's just, I think, and it, again, it's more thoughtful, more strategic. You're getting your stuff out there, but you're not necessarily doing all of the legwork. You just get it started, and then other people help promote it and push it out even further.
Correct.
So you walked us through a couple of the pages on your websites. Are there any other sites or pages on the website that really feature faculty on emorybusiness.com? Or did you show most of the?
I showed most of it. I mean, I do have certain sections where, using tags, it brings up all the stories about them being in media. I try to feature everything. If they are mentioned in the media, I pull out that quote and I link to it, and so people can see it. The future state of what we'll be looking at for emorybusiness.com is expanding coverage and going. And it sort of right now it's being called EB Insider. It could maybe be called something different, but focusing more on, reposting or even writing some of our own content around the actual business school industry and what it means to get a business degree, et cetera. So that goes into more of the selling, why you come back to school or why you look at a business degree in the first place. So that content would be, things like one example we use is our director of leadership is a former Army general, and he's a great orator, a great writer, and can write about a lot of different leadership. Well, if I have General Keene writing about leadership, there's two ways I can do it. One is I can have him writing about the value of leadership in education and what you learn being a leader and how you learn to be a leader. Well, that's something more for that EB Insider, for that. And then there's General Keene, who can write about really bad leadership that we see in the world today. The 2016 election notwithstanding, there's, he could write, forever on, different topics of that. Well, that's more of a, common interest piece. And that goes over on emorybusiness.com, so we can try to extend and expand General Keene's profile. So it's more so realizing that there's a whole nother branch of what our faculty can do in sort of to sell their own work to, the next round of consumers, if you will. So that's the next step. And beyond that, it's getting into really diving into LinkedIn and saying, okay, and that's more so because unique to a business school. It's we're a business school. We should be pretty active on the, premier business network, working with faculty to make sure that their LinkedIn profiles are up to speed. And that's the service element. That's the kind of where our communications group comes in and says, we're not just out to try to grab, content from you and throw it out. We really do want to impart our expertise to help you in other ways. So if you come back and talk to me in a year, I would love to say I have 5 or 6 faculty who are active on LinkedIn and writing on LinkedIn and influencers on LinkedIn. But that's going to take a little bit of a shift because writing for research papers is a little different than writing on LinkedIn. And I want to find the faculty who really enjoy doing it and really, really want to expand on that. So that's the, check with me in a year and we'll see how we've done with that. But that's the next goal.
The work is never done.
Of course not. No.
We are reaching the end of our time today. And so I just want to take a few seconds and send a quick thank you to our program sponsors, Expert File and Enstoner. And a huge thank you to you, J. Mike, for joining me and sharing your knowledge with us. It's been an incredible chance to hear you talk and listen to you walk us through your content strategy. It's extremely impressive. And Expert File looks incredible and like a huge tool to help promote our faculty and our experts out to the larger media and the larger public. And a special thank you to everyone who tuned in today. Thank you for joining me on your Friday afternoon. Have a great rest of your Friday and have a wonderful weekend.